I think after she saw this man eating fast food every day and drinking every day, she was like, nah, I'm out. Like, that's it. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I will be talking about What's the Reality podcast with AD. She did a recent interview with Allie and Madison from the most recent season of Love is Blind season 9. I'm sure everybody is probably sick of this season. There was so much drama, but I did find this interview to be pretty interesting. So I just thought I would break down like some of the main points that were talked about. Okay, so the interview starts out and AD first asks how Allie and Madison are now feeling, you know, that the show is over, the reunion's over, and everything has been aired. We found out Allie has been in pursuit of her degree. She's no longer working the night shift anymore. And she's also now working as I think it's called an aesthetic dermatologist. So basically she's a dermatologist for things involving like the face, like, you know, skincare, procedures on the skin, probably things like Botox, filler, all those things. Definitely not surprised to hear this. I feel like this definitely kind of fits Allie in a way. And she says that some people have been commenting online about how she looks different. So she's basically like, well, hopefully that's a good thing because part of her looking different is her, you know, now being an aesthetic dermatologist. Yeah, and then I also saw a recent video of her where she was basically going in depth about some of the things that she has done to her face. And now seeing this interview, it makes sense as to why she even made that video. It's basically a part of her job now. So she's just kind of advertising for what she's done and what other women can probably come and get done as well. We also find out that Madison is part of a nonprofit group for other people that have been dealing with blindness in Colorado. Madison touches upon how she's happy being single right now and that she still has her job as a UX UI designer. So AD basically wants to know, you know, AD starts the interview by asking like how they got on the show and if this was something that they applied for, were they approached, were they reached out to, were they scouted. Allie says that she was reached out to by casting, but had already actually applied for the show by the time casting had reached out to her. Am I surprised to hear this? No, because I think we all felt that Allie definitely wanted to be on this show, possibly for reasons other than actually finding someone. I think that's kind of the narrative that was floating around, and I do believe that. So to hear that Allie actually applied before even being reached out to, not surprised at all. Okay, Madison admits that she was already a fan of the show, but didn't know that they would actually be filming in Denver. And ironically, she got a DM from a guy on Instagram who said that he was reached out to by someone from Love is Blind to be on the show. And it seems like he wasn't interested in being on it at all. But Madison was like, okay, this is my opportunity. So she reached out to whoever had reached out to this guy, whoever was casting on Love is Blind. And then that's basically how she got on it. So essentially we find out that both Madison and Allie wanted to be on the show. Like they weren't necessarily scouted. Not surprised, because I feel like this far into Love is Blind, I think we're starting to realize that most of the people that get on it are wanting to be on it. You know, I know that there is scouting as well. I know the show reaches out to people, but a good amount of people also want to be on it because of what can come from being on it, right? So that's not surprising. Okay, Madison basically says that watching herself back on TV made her realize that there's things she can learn from and reflect on. She says that she watched the entire show, and we find out that Allie actually didn't end up watching it all. She said that it was hard for her to kind of watch it all back, which I was kind of surprised to hear that, because personally, like before I showed up to that reunion, I would have made sure that I had watched everything back just to be like as prepared as I could be. But I guess I get where Allie's coming from. But for me, like before coming to that reunion, I would have wanted to know exactly what everybody had seen. Yeah, and then Madison basically says that Love is Blind does a good job of capturing the essence of how two people feel in a scene and are feeling in that moment. She didn't ever really feel like she got a bad edit. And I thought this was interesting because this is obviously something that a lot of the viewers talk about and think like, you know, there's so much that we don't see as viewers. And I think a lot of viewers are under the impression that sometimes people can get these bad edits because of the way the show is edited, you know? But Madison is basically saying that what we saw was pretty spot on, which I find to be interesting because I know that other people on Love is Blind probably don't agree with that. Like, they probably do feel like they have gotten bad edits like in the past. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. So 80 asked Allie, you know, if she's upset that the viewers didn't get to see her, you know, connection with Anton in the pods, like the full connection. Allie says that yes, in a way, she is kind of upset about that. And she says that they discussed a lot of topics that we never saw. For example, she says that they discussed things like finances, how they'd like to spend their lives together, their values, money, like all of these conversations happened. We just never saw them. We also find out that Allie also connected with Patrick in the pods. And I thought that that was very interesting because I could not have seen that connection at all. I think there's probably a reason why they never really showed it, because maybe it just wasn't as strong as, you know, the connection she had formed with Anton. 80 wants to know what Allie thought of Anton at the reveal. Okay. Allie says that she thought that he was very attractive and that the reveal kind of solidified her feelings for him even more. Like, she didn't see Anton and think, oh, I made a mistake, or her, you know, feelings were somehow not the same. Like, if anything, it made it even better. And I believe Allie when she says this, because when I saw the reveal, I didn't for one second think Allie was putting on an act in terms of being attracted to Anton. I think she was happy with what she saw, you know? And then 80 basically asked, like, how Allie felt about Anton not proposing at the altar. And Allie basically clears up that Anton actually did propose. I'm sorry, not at the altar, but that Anton did propose at the reveal. We just, for some reason, didn't see it. I guess it was edited out. And Allie kind of goes into reasons as to why that might be, talking about how in her Brazilian culture, they usually put the ring on the other finger. So maybe when it came to like kind of filming that, it didn't look right. But Allie was like, you know, trying to, you know, she basically confirmed that, you know, Anton did propose to her at that reveal. It just was not shown. So that's something that we never really knew. And then 80 obviously wants to know how Allie felt watching it back when she sees the scene where Allie's walking back, you know, to the area where the doors close. She turns around and Anton is not even looking at her, and he's just going to pour himself a drink. And Allie says that she was really taken aback by that moment and that she was fully expecting him to look back at her. I mean, this is the first time you're seeing your fiance. It's a big deal. You're so nervous. You want to take it all in. You want to look at them as long as you can. So when Anton had gone back and reached for that drink, Allie says that that was like really not something she was expecting. I didn't like that. I just felt like, you know, what is the rush to go back and pour yourself a drink? Like, that drink is always going to be there. Like, turn around and look at your fiance. Like, I didn't like it, and it was such a small thing, but I think it was very telling, and I think I was very surprised because, let's be real, guys, Allie is stunning. Like, if I was Anton, I would have been looking at Allie like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. I bagged. I would have taken that moment in, and he didn't. So yeah, it was strange. So 80 mentions that, you know, she talks about the $5,000 that Anton claims that he spent on this ring, right, when he brings that up. And Allie clears up that Anton never even spent $5K on that ring, and that the ring came from production. So once again, I don't know what's up with Anton, but to me, that comment about spending $5K on the ring, extremely unnecessary, especially considering he never spent that money on the ring. Like, I don't really know why he felt like he needed to bring that up to Allie at all. I thought that that whole scene was strange. And I don't really know what Anton was trying to get out of telling Allie he spent $5K on her ring. It clearly backfired because Allie was like, it should have been $10K. So at the end of the day, that whole conversation to me was not needed. I don't know why Anton even said that, trying to make it seem like, oh, look what I've spent on you. Like, you should be grateful. You never even spent that in the first place. So for that, Anton is weird. I don't get that at all. Yeah, and then Allie claims that the conversations between her and Anton were actually more lighthearted than, you know, it made it seem in the edit that they got. You know, she says that it also made it seem like she was very demanding and that she was asking for things like a private chef and this and that, but that's not really how those conversations went. And I mean, Allie can say that, but in my opinion, the conversations that we did see, there was a lot of them talking about finances and, you know, Allie kind of demanding things from Anton that I never thought that Anton would be able to provide her. You know, I'm not, you know, nobody, I don't think anybody thought that Allie was asking for a private chef, right? It was just the fact that she didn't want to cook, she didn't want to clean, she didn't want to work, right? So at the end of the day, I don't know how she's trying to say that the edit made her look like she was more demanding. She is demanding, in my opinion. Like, maybe she doesn't want to believe it, but to me, Allie is demanding, right? Like, and an average guy might really be nervous to take Allie on as a partner because I think she is demanding. I think she just doesn't want to admit that, right? 80 asked about Anton's drinking, okay? And if there were discussions about Anton's drinking that we didn't see, right? Like, is what we saw all that there was? And Allie confirms that there were no other discussions that happened. And 80 wants to know if the mimosas that Anton was having for breakfast were a regular thing. Allie says that, you know, it was a regular thing and that, you know, Anton would come back from his shift and have a drink. And Allie was unhappy with Anton because in the pods, it seemed like he had painted a picture like he was living a healthier lifestyle than he actually was living when they were in real life, right? And I really understand Allie for saying this. I think that that is a weird thing for Anton to have done, right? Like, if you're sitting here drinking every day, you know, I think at one point, Allie mentioned that he'll be drinking 2 to 3 beers a night. He works 5 nights a week. Then he'll possibly be going out drinking on the weekend. That is not healthy. That is not healthy. Like, even having an alcohol problem aside, it's also not a healthy thing to do, right? And then Allie also mentioned that he was also eating out. He was eating fast food. And I doubt that he was telling Allie in the pods that he was drinking, you know, 2 to 3 drinks a night every day and also eating fast food every day, right? Because nobody's going to say that because Anton also knows that's unhealthy. So I get Allie for thinking, you know, or for feeling like Anton painted a picture that was not real. I also don't like that. Like, don't sit here and be telling me that you're healthy, you do this, you do that, and then I come out and you're eating fast food every day and you're drinking every day. You know, and Allie mentioned something else, which, you know, I was laughing in my head because I was like, another thing that's been coming out in the news lately is we have found out that like a man's sperm quality affects like the baby, you know, and even being able to get pregnant and like what the baby, you know, how the baby forms. Like, there's more research about a man's sperm in regards to reproduction. So Allie even mentions that that's also not even good from like a perspective of you wanting to reproduce with this person, right? Because they're not even leading a healthy lifestyle. Yeah, so I don't like that either, you know? And I think that Anton just shouldn't have painted a picture of himself that wasn't true. He should have just been more honest, I think. Okay, so 80 asked Allie about the wedding day. Okay, and 80 wants to know at one point, Allie knew she was going to say no at the altar, right? And Allie basically says that she had a conversation with Anton, I think about a week prior to the weddings. And she basically told him straight up that she didn't see herself saying yes. And she says that this was basically off camera, so it was never filmed. Allie basically tells Anton, you know, a week before the weddings that the reason why she wasn't going to say yes at the altar was because he just wasn't the person that she had, you know, met in the pods. Like, she thought that Anton outside of the pods was a different person. And Allie also says that when she's saying no to Anton at the altar, that Anton is actually, you know, said to her that that's fair. You know, we obviously didn't see that. Maybe it was edited out. But, you know, Allie's just trying to let 80 know and everyone know that, like, he wasn't blindsided, right? Like, even though that's how it looked, that, you know, Allie had made Anton aware that she didn't really have an intention of saying yes. And once again, I just don't really know why she went through with the wedding. I don't. I mean, if I was Anton, maybe he should have been the one to have called off the wedding, because what hope was he holding out for? If a week before the wedding, you know, Allie's telling you, I'm probably not going to say yes, what was the point of the wedding? I don't get it, you know, and Allie saying this just confirms that the wedding was a joke. They went out there and they wasted family and friends' time and everybody's time. So what was the point of that, you know? And Allie basically says that no matter what, she wanted to see it through, right? And I'm like, okay, for what, airtime? I still don't get the point of that. All right, and then 80 asks about one of Anton's family members calling Allie a cold-hearted, DCH. And I don't know if other people saw that, but I felt like a lot of people weren't really mentioning that. And Allie says that she didn't really know who that was, and that was definitely somebody in Anton's family. And then Madison basically chimes in and says that she knows who that was, and that was one of Anton's like best girlfriends who had made that comment. Allie obviously was like, yeah, that wasn't a very nice comment. And she also brings up that after Allie said no to Anton at the altar, that Anton's family and friends were popping champagne, almost like in a celebration that Allie had said no, while Allie's like in the corner crying. So Allie's just mentioning that even seeing that, I think it just solidified that she made the right choice, because she was like, that was not a very nice thing to do, And I thought it was weird too that Anton's family became so nasty after Allie had said no. Like, a lot of people get to the end of this, Love is Blind experiment, and they don't get married. I don't understand why you need to be cursing people out and being that, rude and just contentious. It's not that serious. And let's be real, as mad as family and friends can get, this was Anton and Allie's journey. I don't think it was up to anybody to be out here calling Allie out her name. I don't agree with that at all. So basically, the last parts or the last things that Allie says about Anton is she talks about how she kind of got the ick from Anton, and she mentions how he walks with like his butt tucked in, and that his walk doesn't match his gait or something. And then once again, she mentioned something about him wearing flip-flops while they were on their honeymoon, and that these things were all like icks to her and were kind of part of, I guess, her not really wanting to be with Anton, because I know once women get the ick, it's hard to come back from that. I don't know what the ick is, like something else, which I just thought was a little unnecessary, but, I guess Allie felt like she had to be honest. Okay, so 80 then moves on to Madison, and 80 starts out by asking about Madison's eye condition and what it was like to share that condition publicly. Madison says that she felt a lot of shame about it in the past, and that she was really scared to share it. But that she received I think over 500, something like over 500, I don't know if it was over 50,000, a crazy amount of DMs from other people who were dealing with either had blindness or a similar condition, or they had family members with a similar condition or friends, and that she was so happy that she shared it because the level of support that she received from it was amazing. And then Madison also brings up how in real life she'll run into things when an area is dimly lit. She talked about one time when she went to a concert, and concerts are normally pretty dark, and she basically fell down the stairs and was kicked out of the concert because security assumed that she was drunk. But really, it was her eye condition. And hearing that, I was like, oh, that's so sad. It's really rough, because it's like people are just gonna make assumptions. They're not gonna assume that you have some kind of eye condition. So I was like, that's tough, And all I have to say is that no matter what people have to say about Madison, living your life knowing that one day you could go completely blind, that is not an easy thing to deal with, right? It's scary. It's very, very scary. And I feel like Madison deals with it really well. And I feel like she has a very positive demeanor to her and energy about her. And I applaud her for having that, right? Because I can't imagine what that feels like, to know that one day you could be completely blind and essentially need somebody to help you through life, because you're going to need so much support if that is what ends up happening to Madison. So yeah, I think Madison is a very strong person, and no matter what anybody has to say, she has a very positive, uplifting type vibe to her, and I hope that she keeps that forever. Okay, so 80 starts by asking if Madison had other connections that we didn't see, and we end up finding out that Madison actually had 2 people that she went to proposal date with, and the other guy was someone that was just not shown on the show at all. So it was one other guy and Joe, and it just so happened that the other connection outside of Joe had another connection with someone else, because obviously most people just think that Madison and Joe were the only connections they had. So to hear that she went to proposal day with one other guy, that means that this other connection she had gotten pretty far with. Okay, and then Madison basically, says that in the pods, Joe was actually her number 5 on day 1. And that he kind of continually moved up in the rankings due to his consistency. Madison says that he was very consistent, and just like continued to make her feel like safe in the pods. It seems like they just talked about a lot of things. 80 wants to know what it was like for Madison seeing Joe at the reveal. And Madison basically talks about how during the reveal she was extremely nervous, but that she could also tell that something was kind of off. And she kind of mentions like things about Joe's body language, and she could feel like him kind of pulling away at certain points. But one thing she really brings up, which I've noticed as well, was she could pick up on Joe struggling to like hold that connection that they had in the pods and bring it to real life, right? And we see this even on camera where Joe is telling production and telling the cameras like it's so hard to put the face to like her, what she looks like to their connection in the pods, and like match the voice to what Madison looks like. And, it's almost like he was struggling a lot to do that. And Madison was trying really hard to kind of pull the warmth and the connection that they had from the pods into real life, right? But she could tell that Joe was struggling to do that. So straight off the bat from the reveal, Madison is saying like she noticed something was off with Joe, right? It wasn't just like everything was great. And then Madison also mentions that she noticed Joe was also averting his gaze. Like he would look at her and then kind of look away. And that was another thing that made her realize like something was kind of off there. And hearing that, I just don't know why Madison didn't follow her gut more. I feel like during the reveal, if a guy is averting his gaze, that to me is never a good sign. Never a good sign. Like I get that you're nervous, but they should want to look at you, I mean, that's the first time you're seeing your fiance. It's a big deal. So for Madison to have noticed he was averting his gaze, that should have clocked to her that something was up, and I really wish that Madison had put her walls up a little bit more with Joe. I think that she has this personality where I can tell she just dives straight in, but yeah, I just feel like as women, we get these feelings for a reason, and hearing that she noticed something was off during the reveal, I think says a lot. So, and Madison mentions that watching it back, and watching the interviews that Joe has done after the show has aired, and hearing more of what Joe was thinking in the moments in the show, and during the reveal, I think Madison says that it was very hurtful, right? Because she's looking back and realizing that early on, Joe was admitting that, she wasn't his typical type, and that the connection was not there instantly, right? Which is something she didn't know in the moment. So 80 asked about the honeymoon and the comments that Joe made regarding Madison's body. 80 mentions that Joe apologized during the reunion and wants to know basically if Madison accepts that apology. And Madison basically goes on to say that she accepts the apology, but that it's also a little too late because he had Madison's number. Joe only apologized at the reunion. Like he didn't message Madison and say, hey, I'm sorry for the comments I made, after seeing how much conversation was going on online regarding Madison's, the terms he used, larger physique, right? And the conversation, the backlash, and all the stuff that was going on. What would it have taken for Joe to send Madison a text and say, hey, I'm sorry, do you want to talk about it, right? And I think it just goes to show you that Joe doesn't care. He doesn't. He cares about his image. He came to the reunion and he's like, well, I should apologize, so I will. Acting like Madison is a stranger, like they didn't share this experience together, right? Am I surprised? No. But how great is an apology when you can only really do it on camera? It doesn't feel great, right? So yeah, and Madison basically just goes on to say that Joe was careless with his words, that it's not an issue that she wasn't his type. It's just the way he was wording things. And even when you go back to the scene where he's describing Madison as having larger physique, he's also kind of laughing while he's talking to the cameras about it, like it's a joke or something, right? And those are the things that Madison said really hurt her to watch back. Like the laughing and the oh, she's not really my type. And it's unnecessary. Like, if someone's not your type, they're not your type. But Joe is extremely immature in the way that he handles everything. Another thing that Madison mentions is it was so hard for her because no matter what Joe was telling her, in the bedroom, it was a completely different story. Meaning, like, I know they were sleeping together, Joe was acting like he was really attracted to her. So for her to then watch it back and hear the comments that he made, that's so hurtful. Because if that's how you felt, nobody was telling you to go to the bedroom with this girl. Nobody was forcing you to do that. And once again, this just goes back to my point that men will sleep with women they are not attracted to. I think women really have to understand that even if a man is sleeping with you, it doesn't even mean he's attracted to you. Like, unfortunately, men are that way. It's kind of weird, but they do that. Like, they will sleep with a girl that's not their type, or a girl that they don't really even find attractive. Like, that's just a fact, a sad fact, but it's true. Okay, so AD wants to know what went through Madison's mind when she watched Joe's breakdown during the tux fitting. Okay, so Madison says that it was disturbing and, not just for her to watch it back, but just on even a character level for Joe. And she brought up that she really didn't like how Joe spoke to his friends and also how Joe spoke to the lady that, was like working at the tux fitting. That she just couldn't believe that he spoke to them that way. Madison said that it was also hurtful to know that while she was having this amazing moment with her family, trying on her dresses and super excited, Joe was going through that. Like, that's what it was like for Joe on his end, right? So that was a tough thing for her to watch back. Right, AD asked Madison why she thinks the relationship ended with Joe, considering Joe couldn't give her specific reasons. And in this moment, Madison jokes and basically says it's because of her larger physique. And, she's like, I'm joking, but she says that she acknowledges that she's not Joe's typical type, right? And that Joe basically said that. She thinks it really ended, though, due to Joe's level of brokenness, is basically what she says. And I agree with Madison on this. I think that, and she, Madison also goes on to say that she can't fully speak for Joe and why it ended, and she doesn't really want to. But I agree that Joe is broken. I think that there is something up there. I think that the story regarding his ex and how he got so close as to sending out the wedding invites and then ended things, I think there is something up with Joe. I think he has some things that he needs to work through. It has nothing to do with Madison or any of these other women that he decides to date post-Madison, right? I mean, even hearing that Joe had this fling with Casey after the show goes to show you that, like, he's not serious, right? And that it's not about Madison. He has his own issues because, there's something up there, there's something up there. And I know that he has a girlfriend now. It seems like he's treating her well, but we shall see. And at the end of the day, I think that people have to know that I think that it's very important to see how people treat previous partners and what happened in their previous relationships. I'm not saying that people can't change and people can't grow and blah, 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 blah. The previous patterns and behaviors that someone has in previous relationships, it does matter. So yeah, I mean, good luck to Joe and whoever he's dating now, but I think that Madison is right in saying that there is something about Joe that does seem to be a little bit broken. Something's just not quite right there. And another thing I'll just touch upon is nobody was mad at Joe for not being interested in Madison. Nobody was mad at Joe for not being interested in Madison. It was the way Joe treated Madison. It was the way he went about the situation that was the problem. If he knew that he was not into her, he had so many opportunities to just end it there and say, you know what? I'm not going to move on. I'm not going to continue. Like, it's the way he dealt with things, right? If you have the breakdown during the tux fitting, why are you then going out to party with all these other people in the singles on the cast? Why are you not talking to Madison? So to me, it's a character flaw. It's a character flaw, and yeah, it's great that he has a new girlfriend, whatever, but like, is he not going to treat her that way? Because I think that the way somebody treats other people is very, very important. And one thing I'll say is sometimes I really don't like the way men treat women that they are not interested in. I think it's unnecessary and I think it's very, very mean for no reason. And women do it too, where it's like if they're not into a guy, they start to treat them like crap. I don't believe in that. Like, all of a sudden, because you're not attracted to someone, common human decency just flies out the window. Why? I've never been a fan of that. Like, no matter what you feel about someone, treat them with respect. Like, what is the issue? Especially when they haven't wronged you in any way. And that's what frustrated me about Joe. And I think this is what frustrated a lot of the viewers about Joe. Like, a lot of people do this. Like, you don't need to treat somebody badly because you don't like them or because you're not attracted to them. They're still a human being. They still have feelings. Like, that was the issue with him, you know? Okay, so AD then asked what the reunion was like for them, for Allie and Madison. And Allie basically says that it was quite intense. And Madison says that she felt pressure because her and Joe hadn't talked at all prior to the reunion. Madison basically confirms that she got the closure that she needed. And we find out that Madison apologizes to Joe actually when watching the show back. That she wasn't patient with Joe as she could have been. So she's also kind of reflecting on where she could have done better with the communication between them. So AD wants to know if anything was shocking for them to find out at the reunion. Allie says that Megan's child announcement was surprising for her. Okay, and then AD asks about Joe and Casey dating. Madison says that she doesn't think it was even dating and that they were likely just hooking up. I 100% agree with Madison on that. Like, dating, right. Like, I think it was just a hookup. Madison says Joe and Casey probably started seeing each other about a month after their engagement ended. A month? Nasty work. Nasty work. Madison wants to make it clear that Joe was basically the one that had the loyalty towards her. So she doesn't feel that, like, Casey is the one at fault when it came to them dating. Like, she kind of puts more of that burden on Joe, to the fact that they were dating like just a month after filming and their engagement ended. And I understand that because I can tell that Casey and Madison are not close. It doesn't seem like they were close during filming, and they're definitely not close now. So she basically is saying she puts more of that ownership on Joe for getting in a relationship with Casey so soon after their relationship ended. So AD brings up the disagreement between Casey and Madison regarding what happened at Mike's pool party. Madison basically says Casey came up to her and a couple of other girls, and Madison asks how Joe is doing, right? Casey and Madison have a conversation in private, and Casey immediately starts telling Madison that Joe didn't treat her right and refers to them as being like Eskimo sisters. And Madison really didn't like this conversation because she felt like there was a blatant disrespect for like the relationship that her and Joe had. And Casey was just kind of focused on the fact that they were now, you know, her and Joe were now seeing each other. It's also extremely rude to refer to them as being Eskimo sisters. Now, Casey basically denies this story, but I don't believe Casey. I don't believe anything that liar says. If anything, I'm more likely to believe Madison. She's probably being truthful because I feel like she has no reason to lie. And Casey has shown time and time again that the character is not right? She does not have good character. So, and basically Madison just goes on to say that Casey was just acting classless. Not surprised. We know that Casey's classless. So AD brings up the kiss between her and Joe after filming, and Madison says that it happened about 2 weeks after filming, and Madison wanted to meet up with Joe to kind of see if he would be more honest about why things didn't work out between them without the cameras being there. She didn't really expect the kiss to happen, but that after they kissed, Madison sent like a text message because she was confused about the kiss, and Joe supposedly never responded. Yeah, Joe is a manipulator, because what was that kiss about? And this is what I'm trying to say, like, no matter what, Joe is not a good person, guys. He's not, you know? Okay, you're not into Madison, that's fine. Why are you talking to her 2 weeks after filming, kissing the girl, knowing how much the breakup was hard for her? It doesn't make any sense, so not surprised. Okay, so all in all, Madison basically wishes that she had followed her gut. And I wish Madison had followed her gut too. And any other woman out there listening to this video right now, follow your gut. Follow your gut, follow your gut. It will usually never lead you astray. Especially as a woman, I do believe in a woman's intuition and that we have these feelings and just these gut feelings that overcome us sometimes and we don't even understand why we're feeling it. Don't ignore your feelings, you know, just don't ignore it. Madison felt like something was off during that reveal with Joe. she was right, And there were so many other instances where I know she felt like something was off and she just suppressed it and pushed past it and ignored it. Don't do that, Especially in dating, I think you get these feelings for a reason. You do. Okay, 80 then asked Allie why she never asked Anton about the strip clubs and like him going out and partying and clubbing. Allie basically says that she doesn't know why. She talked about how filming was really stressful, blah, 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 blah. But no matter what, Allie had no reason why she never asked Anton for that. She didn't ask him because Allie had no intention of marrying Anton. She knew very early on that she was not going to marry this man. So she didn't think the conversation was worth having because she knew she was going to say no very early on. I think very early on. I think after she saw this man eating fast food every day and drinking every day, she was like, nah, I'm out. Like, that's it, right? And she doesn't want to say that because it'll make her look bad. And everybody will be like, well, Allie, if you felt this so early on, why did you go to the altar, right? So she can't really fully be honest. And like she literally has no reason for it because there is no rhyme. There's no reason. She never wanted to marry that man. So she didn't care about that conversation. Period. Yeah. So the interview basically ends and 80 asks, like, looking back, is there anything Allie or Madison would have done differently? And Madison basically says that she would have followed her intuition. And she, kind of ends the interview by saying, like, don't mute the voice inside. And I really like that because I think it was a very insightful, way for her to view her journey on the show and everything that unfolded. It's interesting because as viewers, we could tell that Joe was not feeling it, but Madison couldn't tell that in the moment, right? Because she was actually in it with Joe. And obviously her watching the show back, she's reflecting and realizing like, damn, like the signs were there, There were a lot of signs that she should have probably paid attention to that she didn't. So I think that was a very insightful way of her viewing her journey on the show. And yeah, that's how this interview ends. I think that people are probably very tired of this season at this point. I personally really liked this season, even though it was such drama. I thought that it was an interesting season and I appreciated, Love is Blind, Netflix's ability to make this season interesting, even though nothing worked out. I do hope that in the next season, more couples actually get married. So we shall see. But yeah, so that kind of wraps up the interview between Allie and Madison. Once again, let me know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. I would love to hear your opinions. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys next time.